Hey there, and welcome to the first episode of the Motorsport Enthusiast Podcast. My name is John, the Motorsports Enthusiast, your host of this show. This show is about exactly that, racing, motorsports, everything, sim racing, NASCAR, Formula One, IMSA, GT, doesn't matter what discipline it is. I'm going to talk about it all here on the Motorsports Enthusiast Podcast. So, on today's show, we're going to give a little bit of a recap of what's going on in NASCAR as well as what's going on in Formula One, both of those seasons starting here recently. So let's start with the one that's been going on the longest. So far, it's been the NASCAR season. So at Daytona, we had a surprising victor of Ricky Stenhouse Jr., followed by good old Kyle Busch, and then William Byron finishing up last week's win at Las Vegas. So that's a sort of, not really a surprising list outside of Ricky Stenhouse. He had a dominant, quote-unquote, dominant win on that lap where he barely edged out some of those other drivers to win the Daytona 500 as they were wrecking going into 1 and 2. So he is locked into the playoffs. Not sure how far he's going to go. If he can make it to that last that round where Talladega is the last race before the next round, I think he could possibly have a chance, but it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what he is able to do in that number 47 camp. For Kyle Busch, he joined RCR after a long tenure with Joe Gibbs Racing in the 18 machine. No longer the M&M driver that we all love and still want, or love or hate. A lot of people hate him. Even though he won at Auto Club, they had a lot of mixed emotions. There were a lot of cheers outside of the booze there for Kyle Busch winning at Auto Club, which is a good sign. And, I think it's kind of because of where he is. He's driving a Chevy. He's driving for Richard Childress. Everybody loves Chevys. Everybody loves Richard Childress. Well, you may not like Chevy if you're a Ford or a Toyota guy. But still, it's great to see Kyle Busch win in his newly found number 8 machine. And William Byron had one of the most dominating races that I've seen in a while at Las Vegas. Had a late race caution that more or less should or should not have, counted based off of, what side of the fence you're on. But William Byron was able to get it done after Martin Truex Jr. was the only car that stayed out and didn't take any tires. So Byron won that. So with 3 races down, the next race being Phoenix coming up, your championship picture right now is comprised of Stenhouse, Kyle Busch, and William Byron in that 24 machine. My favorite driver, by the way. If you've seen any of my content on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or Facebook, no matter where you were watching, you probably can tell that I favor that 24 machine very heavily. So, with that being said, let's talk about where they're headed this week. They're heading to Phoenix. It's going to be a great race. Last year's spring race was fantastic with Chase Briscoe winning that event. But a couple drivers that I want to keep an eye on here going into this weekend, and this is kind of my top 5. I'm going to get into the betting segment a little bit later on. But one of the drivers I'm going to look at is Ryan Blaney. I picked him in Vegas, I picked him in Auto Club, and he got caught up in some stuff. I think it's about time that Blaney just gets something going. He's very good at Phoenix. By the way, if you hear like a car shifting, I'm recording this in the car. So there's that. It's not because I am such of a motorsport lover that I'm going to record this in a car every time, but I happen to be in my car doing this. So either way, back to the conversation. I think Ryan Blaney has a really good race at Phoenix. I think he bounces back. He's one of my picks to win. My other pick to win is, or driver to watch rather, is going to be Chase Briscoe. He performs very well here. And with that win in the spring of last year, he could possibly get it done. And another driver that could possibly get it done is the 4 machine of Harvick. Harvick literally, this is his playground. He's won here too many times to count. And he's had such a great run here at Phoenix that he's always going to be in contention. The other 2 drivers I want to pay attention to is going to be the number 1 of Ross Chastain. That's the first one. And I want to pay attention to him because he definitely knows how to get it done on these tracks. He's hungry for his win. Here early on, he almost won it at Auto Club. He was running fairly well at Vegas, but I think Phoenix is going to suit his style. I think he could possibly get it done there in Phoenix. So drivers right now to keep an eye on: Blaney, Briscoe, Harvick, Chastain. And my last driver is going to be Kyle Busch, and I'm going to tell you why. Last year in this race, the number 8 machine of Tyler Reddick, who is now with 2311 Racing in that 45 machine, who is now in that number 45 machine, he is no longer, obviously, with that 8 car. And who's in it? Kyle Busch, who is very good at these kind of races. Tyler Reddick finished second here in the spring of 2022 in that 8 car. Kyle Busch already has a win. He performed well at Vegas. I think he could possibly win again and staple his name as one of the top championship contenders 4 races into the season. Now, Busch is going to have to definitely watch out for some other drivers like Logano. Logano wants to have a good week. I would watch out for Logano on this track. He's very good. Dominated last year's fall race at Phoenix simply because he needed to win a championship. Wasn't really that. He was impressive in the spring, but didn't have a solid finish at the end. So I would pay attention to, going back to Kyle Busch, I'd pay attention to Kyle Busch in that 8 car because they are more than likely going to bring the same exact car to Phoenix and with Kyle Busch. So that is my watch on that perspective. A couple of outsiders that I think are going to do very well this weekend is going to be the 6 car of Brad Keselowski because of what we've seen this far. I was talking with my sim racing friends, shout out to iRacing Warriors Motorsports, regarding Brad Keselowski, and I told them, I was like, hey, they're going to have a good season this year, not just at super speedways. And they're like, oh, whatever. They have nothing to prove for that. Well, look at the finishes that Keselowski has had. He's been running up in the top 10 every single race or just outside of the top 10. And he's been doing very well. And I think this could be a track that Keselowski could possibly finish up in the top 5 to top 10 in. I'm predicting a top 10, but I think Keselowski could possibly squeak his way into the top 5. So right now, if we take some inventory on some drivers, we have Ross Chastain in the Chevy, Kyle Busch in the Chevy. We have Chase Briscoe in a Ford. We have Ryan Blaney in a Ford. And we also have, wow, I just lost my last driver. Chastain, Busch. Chastain, okay, hold up. Chastain, Busch, Blaney, Briscoe. I just lost my last driver. Well, either way, I said it before, so you're listening. And then I'd pay attention to, Logano's going to be good, Keselowski's going to be good here at Harvick, Ford. So, yeah, so 3 Fords, 2 Chevys there. Another thing that I want to pay attention to is going to be specifically what Hendrick Motorsports can do at this track. With Chase Elliott not being in the field and Kyle Larson good everywhere, is Kyle Larson going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder to possibly get it done here? I think he possibly could. Is he one of my top picks? No. But I still think that Larson is going to put up a fight. Same thing with William Byron. William Byron was good here last year. Was not able to string together some finishes, but he was still good. Now, outside of those drivers that I mentioned, the outsider that I'm looking into is Brad Keselowski finishing in the top 10, as well as A.J. Allmendinger having a good race. Now, why do I say A.J. Allmendinger? Because he, in that 16 car, running full-time in the Cup Series, I'm going to be surprised if he doesn't make it in on points. He's right there at the tail end of this championship battle. I think he could squeak his way in, especially when they go to the Indy Road Course. Keep in mind, he won that race. So just pay attention to A.J. Allmendinger in this event. He was very good here last year when he finished, I believe he finished in 11th outside of the stages. So those are my outsiders looking in. Let's switch over into Formula One really quick. Let's talk about what's going on in the Formula One world. Just had the Bahrain Grand Prix, and Red Bull looks like it's the class of the field. Apparently, they were still laying back, even though they were beating cars by 0.7 of a second. Apparently, they could have beat the entire field by a second a lap. My bad, 7/10 a second a lap, and they could have beat it by a full second a lap. So Red Bull looking strong. Ferrari has their issues, and I'm really concerned about Leclerc with his with his power issues. I think it's going to be hard to get him back into the swing of things simply because of the fact that his car is just not good. They already switched out the power unit, so it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do. I think they can bounce back in a week, but it's going to be curious. I'm curious to see what they're going to do as a Ferrari fan, well, really as a Charles Leclerc fan, due to his background and what he's gone through. I really want to see him have a good year. I think outside of the Red Bull stranglehold that they have on Formula One, I think even though he had the DNF this past weekend, I think he can do well going into the future. Let's talk really quick about Fernando Alonso. I mean, you can't script up something better than this. With him up there running with the Red Bulls and the Ferraris and the Mercedes and beating out a Mercedes with Lewis Hamilton, I would be dumb to say that I don't think that, or I'd be dumb to say if I thought that they couldn't win a race with Alonso. I think Alonso could win a race. I think it's going to happen. I think everybody's going to go absolutely bananas. I think it's going to be fucking incredible. So we have to see what they're able to do in that camp. But let's switch over to what my favorite portion of the show is. It's the betting corner with the motorsports enthusiasts. So what are my top bets going into the weekend? Well, I'm on a challenge, if you don't already know, to make $5,000 in the Cup Series this year by picking winners only. So I've picked 3 out of the 4 races. I picked Martin Truex Jr. at the Clash. I picked technically Stenhouse on a live bet at Daytona, but I'm not going to count that because I didn't pick that pre-race. Picked Kyle Busch, and I picked William Byron. So my top 5 bets or picks in order this weekend is as follows. Not in order, just my top 5 picks. Kevin Harvick to win, Briscoe to win, Blaney to win, Busch to win, and last but not least, I just lost my last driver again. Briscoe, Busch, Harvick, Blaney, and Briscoe, Harvick, Busch, Blaney, Briscoe, Harvick, Busch, Blaney, Chastain. There we go. Those are my 5 picks to win this weekend. Now, my best bet of the weekend, I haven't looked at the odds yet. I would say it's going to be Harvick with a top 10 or a top 5. I mean, a full slate on Harvick is never bad, but if Harvick is anywhere near plus odds for a top 10 or a top 5, you know I'm going to be putting serious cash on him. So those are my top bets of the weekend. Some other drivers I want to pay attention to that I may put a little bit of money on. It's going to be the AJ Allmendinger as well as the Brad Keselowski top 10 bet, mainly because I like what they're doing over there, and I think the odds are going to be in very much of the either one of those favors. Now, I'm not going to put a lot on it. I'm going to put the majority of my bankroll on those 5 winners because that's what I've been doing. It's almost like the ladder challenges like you see some of the professional sports bettors do if you've been paying attention to on TikTok. But I'm going to be putting $20 a piece on Briscoe, Blaney, Chastain, Busch, and Harvick. $20 a piece, which would make me in plus money on all of those, regardless of who wins. So thank you for tuning in to the first episode of the Motorsports Enthusiast Podcast, the podcast for motorsports enthusiasts. If you would like to follow me on social, I'd love to have you be a part of it. It's at the Motorsport Enthusiast everywhere, and in my TikTok bio, you can join the link to the Discord where I'll be dropping live pics, talking a little bit more, and we will be discussing all things motorsports. Well, this is John. The checkered flag has reached us. Have a good rest of your day.